Hello and good day, everyone. So, for today's session, we will be discussing Module 3, Lesson 12, Education. Our learning objectives are the following. First one, identify the forms and functions of institutions. Second, appreciate the purpose of social institutions in the society. Third, develop sociological perspective towards the social institutions. We have here from blackboards to screens. With how we are doing in the pandemic, with how education is evolving, this is a perfect example of how we can, as part of the education system of our country, evolves. From face-to-face classes, we are now into online classes. So before, when we do face-to-face classes, the views of the teacher and the students are different. For the teacher, they will face their students, while for the students, they will face their teacher and the blackboard. But during the time of online classes, both the teacher and the students are experiencing the same thing, which is they are both facing their screens, just like an example of how we are doing right now. Okay, we have here education. Education enables children to adults to acquire basic academic ideas and skills and cultural and social norms. So basically for education, we can acquire academic ideas and academic skills while we are at school, and we can also acquire cultural and social norms at school. So these are the things that we are supposed to learn and we are learning at school during the time that we are studying. We have here also education begins at home. So before we discuss what is family about, and this is an example also. You mentioned that family is the basic unit of society. That's why we do agree that education begins at home. So basically for children, we are taught early on in life what are the good and the bad and the things that we are allowed and not allowed to do, what are culturally acceptable and what are culturally not acceptable in society. Then we have here two types of education. We have formal education and informal education. So for formal education, learning through an established curriculum and teaching and learning methods. So basically for formal education, it is established and learning methods are included. So these are basically the planned subjects that we have, the ones that have curriculum. For example, in our subject sociology, we have here module 1, module 2, module 3, and each module will have their parts or their lessons. That is an example of formal education in which everything is set up properly and is properly organized as well. And then the next one, we have informal education, discovering other skills beyond the classroom, usually from ourselves or from our agents of socialization. So basically for informal education, this is education learning outside of the school. Example for this one is how we behave when we became professionals. How do we behave like professionals? How do we behave as members of society? That's the difference between formal and informal education as well. We can say that for informal education, it is the behavior aspect of things. How do we behave outside of the school? While for formal education, how do we apply what we learn from the school or our school as well? And then we have two types. We have manifest functions and latent functions. Now for both of this one, they are from the structural functionalism perspective, and they are the two purposes as well. Again, we have manifest functions and latent functions. Let's start first with manifest functions. These are the primary intentions of education to provide learning to the students. So basically, for manifest functions, these are the course outline that we have. These are the subjects that are discussed generally. For example, for STEM students, we have biology, chemistry, and physics. Examples for this one is when we are in grade school or even in high school, we have certain subjects that are generally discussed. We have mathematics, arithmetics, language, history, to name a few. While on the other hand, Latent functions are unintentional or hidden purposes of education and is to acquire skills through experience or meet friends. So for latent functions, these are basically the secondary or hidden functions or unintended functions of education. We have here an example is how do we manage our set of friends? Who are our set of friends? Who are our peers? Or we can even discover our love interest to education. We could also have for latent functions, how do we manage ourselves when it comes to peer pressure, when it comes to time management, and how do we work with groups? May it be small group or bigger group. Again, these are the two purposes according to structural functionalism. We have manifest functions and latent functions. So to continue on, we will be discussing the perspectives. The first perspective that we have is we have structural functionalism. So just like what we discussed a while ago, we have from the we have the manifest and we have the manifest and intentional, and we have the latent and unintentional. So basically, how are we with these two? How are we with functioning with these two? How are we with managing these two? How are we with relating what we learn from school, may it be manifest or latent, to our society, to our family? That's for structural functionalism. And then next, we have for conflict theory. For conflict theory, at present, there are those who can easily access online classes and those resort to modular learning or even no education at all. So basically for conflict theory, how accessible is education? For example, during the pandemic, our switch from face-to-face classes to online classes, not everyone has their own specific types of gadget that they can use for their online classes. Not everyone has their stable internet connection as well. So that's the problems that we are encountering during education and the conflict theory during the time of online classes. Because of that, some resorts to modular learning or some no education at all. So basically, these individuals, these students, are thinking to let the pandemic pass so that we could return to face-to-face classes and they can return to study at as well. Now, for conflict theory, even before the pandemic, there is already an issue with education and how accessible it is. For example, there are certain teachers who needs to go to certain barangays, who will pass rivers and mountains just so they could teach their students, just so that education could be accessible. Also for education as well, we have the SPED program for our brothers and sisters who are struggling or who are emotionally. Okay, so that is it for conflict theory. Let's proceed with our last perspective. We have symbolic interactionism. So for symbolic interactionalism, education means credible, employable, well-mannered, smart, and skilled. So basically, these are the positive things when we say education. We have our own credentials. We can be employable because we are taught properly to school. We have our latent functions as well. We are then well-mannered. We have also our informal education. Because of these, we are taught how to be a member of society and how to be a professional. While for no education, it means knows nothing, ill-mannered, and unskilled. So basically, if you don't have any education at all, you will be labeled as someone who does not know anything. You are ill-mannered, you don't have any manners, and you are unskilled. So that's for our three perspective and the education as well. So before we end this class, I have here a question. So what do you think are the manifest and latent functions of your education at Xavier University? Again, a point to ponder. What do you think are the manifest and latent functions of your education in XU? So that is all for our topic for lesson 12. I do hope you have a great day. Stay safe and God bless always. Thank you.